be screwed. Feel my own adrenaline, yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Issei, Rias meet Danny Phantom. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of TheWhiteTitan on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. 4 days after Danny and his peerage enrolled in QO Academy, the student council decided that they needed a new DSPLN committee, so they voted for Danny and his peerage to be in charge of the committee. At first, Danny didn't want to do it, but after Sona asked him nicely, he decided to do it. And just like Sona and Rias, he and his peerage were now disguised as a school group for their peerage meetings, and the problems in the school decreased significantly, which was probably thanks to Urza. Here he was now, after school hours, doing some paperwork. He would never understand how something so vile could exist, only writing their name over and over until their hands cramped. Around him were his peerage, either doing work or goofing off. The place was really nice, big and roomy, a shelf where they can keep books, mostly manga, a TV and game console. If things get boring, a file cabinet, a sofa and some desks. "Are you done yet?" Natsu groaned, bored out of his mind. "Does it look like I'm done?" Danny retorted with a deadpanned expression. Whoever created paperwork was both the enemy of God and devils. "Don't forget the meeting, Danny-sama," Siesta said as she took some papers on the desk and placed it neatly on the cabinet. "Your peerage will meet with Rias-sama and Sona-sama." "I know, Siesta-chan," Danny said as he looked at the clock. The two kings arranged a meeting about something important. "Well, let's go guys," Danny said as he stood up, cracking the fingers in his hand. "It's time for the meeting." They all nodded, except for the non-peerage members. Seiya and Sting decided to go with, since they didn't want to do the work, while Siesta joined out of obligation to Danny. The large group exited their room and towards the students' council, where the meeting would take place. When they reached the door, they saw Rias and her peerage on the other side of the halls. Danny waved at Rias, who saw him but suddenly blushed. It was weird for Danny to see her blush, since it was usually him doing the blushing she caused. He didn't notice the glare she was giving to Siesta, who gave a flirty smirk at her, like she viewed Rias as a child. That time Siesta showed what Danny did to her made her feel jealous. The way he caressed her body, her skin, and how his member throbbed and ejaculated. The blush intensifies as she remembered what she watched. She quickly entered the room, avoiding looking at a confused Danny and smug Siesta. Aquino giggled as well and gave Danny a lustful look before entering the room, followed by the rest of her fellow servants. Danny scratched his head before he led his peerage inside the room. Thanks to a little magic, they managed to fit 3 whole peerages in it. Sona and her peerage were seated calmly, waiting for them. "Good," Sona said once the other 2 peerages were seated. Cheyenne was on Danny's lap and placed his hand on her head. "We can now begin the meeting." "So what's the meeting about?" Danny asked as he gently massaged a white-haired girl's scalp, causing her to purr in delight. Most of the girls glared at her with a jealous look, while the rest of them just sweat-dropped. Sona coughed to regain her composure and looked at her fellow devils. "As you are aware, the full moon is next week," she said, "which means the portal to the familiar forest. And as you know, only one peerage can enter through the portal," Rias said. "So we must decide who will go." "Excuse me, but what's the familiar forest?" Issei asked with a confused expression. Sharing his confusion were Starfire, Raven, Asia, Gray, Teresa, and Sagi. "Familiars are creatures that are bonded to devils," Rias explained. "They assist you in battle and do your contracts for you. You've already met mine, Issei-kun." She held out her hand and a magic circle appeared. From there a small, circular bat appeared. It was cute. "I don't think I've seen that bat be," Issei was interrupted when the bat transformed into a red-haired girl. His eyes widened as the girl waved at her. "You're that girl from the store." Yes, some familiars can change their appearance, Rias explained as the girl turned back to a bat and landed on Ria's shoulder. And the stronger the devil is, the more familiars they can have, Danny added. I have about 3 familiars. Sugoi, Issei said as he looked at the bat. His thoughts wandered to the girl and he began to giggle perversely. Cheyenne noticed, so she took off her shoe and threw at his head. Oh. Pervert. Anyway, Sona said, getting back to topic. We have to decide which peerage can go this month. Oh, you guys can handle that, Danny said, getting their attention. We already have our own portal there. Eh? Rias and Sona said as they looked at the Phoenix King. Yeah, he explained. Lisana-chan is related to the familiar MSTR there, so we can come and go whenever we want. Can we come with you? Rias asked, giving Danny the puppy eyes. Pretty please? Sorry, Danny said as he looked away. But only our peerage is allowed to use the portal. Moo, Rias said with a pout, even for your fiancé. Yup, Danny said with a nod. Well, that takes care of my problem. How are you going to solve yours? Easy, Sona replied, causing the 2 kings to look at her. We settle this the old-fashioned way. Chess, Danny guessed. But that'd be unfair. You beat Ria's Heim every time. Hey. No, Sona said. We'll decide by playing dodgeball, my peerage against hers. Oh, well that seems fair, Danny said. But I have a more interesting idea. What is it? Sona asked with a curious look. Since tomorrow's a weekend, come to the Kuro who knows Su tomorrow, Danny said as he and some of his peerage grinned. We'll tell you there. That grin makes me feel uneasy, Eve said in her deadpan tone. Very well, Sona said. And to whoever wins will go with Danny-san to the familiar forest on the night of the full moon. Deal, Rias said hurriedly. Wait, don't I get a say? Danny said when he saw them shake hands. No, they said in unison. You guys are weird, Danny muttered. One moment they would argue, and the next they were on sync. Well then, is there another discussion? Sona asked, looking at her fellow devils. Oh yeah, Danny said as he remembered something. I was thinking of opening a cafe in the school grounds, for fun. A cafe? Saji asked in a confused tone, while the girls Danny grew up with all had gleams in their eyes. Is that needed in Kyo? Yes, Sona said as she looked down to hide her expression. A cafe would help improve the spirit of the students. Oh yes, it definitely will, Rias said with a nod. A lot of them would enjoy resting in a cafe. Yes, Cheyenne said as she nuzzled on his chest. Cafe is important. Then it's settled, Sona said as she adjusted her glasses. You have the student council's permission to start a cafe. Thanks, Danny said with a smile that made Sona blush. Saji gritted his teeth in jealousy. Now he knows how the rest of the male students feel. Well, if there is nothing else to talk about, you may go, Sona said. Danny, Rias and their peerage bid goodbye to Sona and her peerage before walking through the school halls. Danny-kun, Rias said, getting his attention. Here's my papers. I can take my stuff later once I pack. Here's mine too, Akino said as she pulled out the same paper. Mine too, Cheyenne said. Rose, Siko, Elsa, Eve, Kiba and Gray also handed their papers while Issei sulked on the ground. He wanted to rent a room, but his mom won't let him. Those oppi were so close, yet so far from his reach. Great, Danny said as he pocketed the papers. We'll help you with your stuffs. Danny-san, a voice said, causing them to turn and saw Sona walking towards them. I need the paperwork you were assigned to. Oh right, Danny said, forgetting that he was doing paperwork. I'll get back to it. Sona nodded before she walked back to the student council room. He slumped and sighed as he thought about all the cramping his hand will experience. You guys go on ahead, I still need to finish my paperwork, he said. Siesta-chan, you're in charge of dinner. Hi Danny-sama, Siesta said with a bow. What would you like for dinner? Some curry would be nice, Danny said before he waved at them and walking to the DSPLN committee's office. He didn't notice the fierce gleam in most of the female members of his peerage. They looked at each other before they started a fierce and ancient ritual that would help them decide the winner. Jankenpon, they exclaimed, earning weird looks from Rias and her peerage. Danny sighed as he kept signing papers. Only 2 piles were left before he could finally go home, eat, read manga, watch anime and prepare for the special contest he had planned for Rias and Sona. It was something he and his peerage do for fun and to train their teamwork. The door suddenly opened, causing him to look up from his work. He was surprised to see Mocha and Mizore walking towards him with small smiles. "What are you two doing here?" he asked. "We didn't want to leave you all alone, so we came and help you out," Mocha said as Mizore nodded, SCK on her lollipop. "Thanks guys," he said with a smile before looking back to his desk. "I could use the company." He didn't see the look the 2 girls exchanged. It was full of mischief. Despite another girl being there, they were good friends, so they won't mind working together. And there was no one here at the moment, so he was all theirs today. First, they should lower his guard by helping him through the paperwork, then they'll pounce. The 3 worked through the papers, chatting and laughing a bit. Soon, the paperwork was almost done. "All right, just a few more and we're done," Danny said with a grin directed at his 2 female companions. "Thanks you too." "It's no problem," Mocha said with a smile as she placed the finished papers on the desk. "We're happy to help." "Yeah," Mizore said as she placed her share of the papers. She and Mocha exchanged looks before they nodded. Mizore walked behind Danny and grabbed his shoulders, surprising him a little. "You seems a little stressed. How about a massage?" "No, that's not nice." He stopped when he emanated from how her hands kneaded his stiff shoulders. Like magic, he could feel himself relaxing. "Oh man, that feels good." Mizore nodded at Mocha, who discreetly transformed into inner Mocha and started unbuttoning her shirt. She then changed places with Mizore without Danny noticing. She then unbuttoned her shirt before crawling under his desk. "Does it feel good, Danny-kun?" Mocha asked, causing Danny to open his eyes. "Mocha-chan?" he said as he turned around, and his eyes widened when he saw that she wasn't wearing a shirt, showing her pink BR, and she became her inner self. "Where's your shirt? And where's Mizore-chan?" "Down here," a voice said below him and felt something touching his crotch, causing him to yelp. "Wow, you're so stiff." Another line for you to read. Poor man, poor lucky man. He looked down and saw a shirtless Mizore touching the front of his breathe with a smirk. "Stop," he exclaimed as he held on Mizore's hands, trying to protect himself. "We shouldn't be doing this in school." "But we just want to relieve your stiffness," Mizore said with a smirk as she managed to unzip his breathe. He was about to pull her arms off his crotch when Mocha suddenly yanked his arms up, giving Mizore access to his privates. "Here, let me keep your hands busy," Mocha said as she took his hands and placed them on her chest, causing him to blush as she made his hands move on their own. She minimum blushed, enjoying the feeling. "Your hands feel so good." "Wow," Mizore said as she saw the bulge in front of her getting bigger. "You're really getting stiff." She then undid the breathe and grabbed his PP from his underwear. She grinned as she looked at the throbbing member in front of her, the scent enticing her even more. She grabbed it with 2 hands and began stroking it. Danny imaged him as he felt Mizore's soft hands him, while Mocha made him grope her soft chest. He should stop this, since they were in the office that Sona trusted them to use, but he could feel his lust slowly taking over his mind. See, come on guys," he said as he tried to hold in a minute. "Stop it." "But you're enjoying yourself so much," Mocha said with a grin. "No, I'm not," Danny denied. "Then why are your hands moving on their own?" Mocha said. Danny looked at his hands and saw that she stopped holding them, so he was the one doing all the grpng. "Do you like how they feel? It makes me feel happy that you like my chest." Mizore noticed that she was being ignored. Puffing her cheeks in a pout, she began stroking the harder and licked the head. Danny yelped in surprise as Mizore twirled her tongue around his head. Years of SCK a lollipop really gave her the skills to give the best head to their king. "My Mizore-chan," he emanated as she SCK on his PP, from the taste. He suddenly placed his hands on her head, stroking her hair. Mocha looked at the scene with half-lidded eyes before she took off her BR, freeing her chest, and grabbed Danny's face. "Mocha-chan?" She smiled at him before she placed his mouth on her right BRST. She imaged when she felt his lips touch her NPL. "SCK it," she said. Danny complied as he opened his mouth and began SCK on her NPL. She imaged louder as she felt his teeth and tongue around her NPL. "Ah tilde, Harder SCK on it harder. Danny complied as he used his right to play with her other NPL. Mizor was busy deep-throating Danny, causing him to M&M on Mocha's NPL. D Danny kun, she M&M loudly as she began fingering herself with her hands inside her underwear. Mizor bobbed her head fast and began playing with his ball. I'm almost there, Danny breathed, feeling himself about to come. Just as he was about to come, he heard someone knocking on the door. Danny-san, Sona's voice said from the other side of the door. Are you there? The three widened their eyes as they heard the door opening. If Sona caught them in this position, it would mean extra work as punishment, and Rias heard this, then she, Aquino and Cheyenne would punish him. Sona opened the door and peeked through it, spotting Danny writing on some papers. His hair was a bit messy, he looked a bit sweaty, and was a little red on the face. Oh, hey Sona-chan, he said with a smile. Are you okay? Sona asked in a worried tone as she entered the room. Oh yeah, just a little hot in here, Danny said as he fanned himself with his shirt. Sona PP an eyebrow at that comment, since she rarely saw a Phoenix getting sweaty under the heat. But then again, Danny was not your ordinary Phoenix. Under the table were Mocha and Mizor, who was embrace, SCK and lick his PP and ball. He should push their heads off him, but Sona might see his hands and get suspicious. Come on guys, stop it, he pleaded to them quietly as he smiled at Sona. You're gonna get us caught. But the two girls just continued their service to him. The idea of someone with authority in the same room as them while they were playing with his PP under the desk was turning them on. It was like something out of the adult videos they would sometimes watch, to look for tips to S-duck their king. Do you need any help? Sona asked. No, I'm good, Danny said. I'm almost done, but thanks. If you're sure, Sona said, and Danny looked at her. You know, I'm really surprised by how much you've changed, Sona-chan, Danny said suddenly, getting Sona's attention. What do you mean? Sona asked, causing Danny to curse in his head. He shouldn't have started a conversation when two girls were attacking him from below. He resisted the urge to buckle his hips as the two SCK harder and began FNDLNG his ball. Well, I remembered that you were so quiet, Danny said with a nostalgic smile. The two of us were the quiet ones in our group, and they were always teasing us until we're red. Seeing you so confident and in control makes me realize how you've grown up. You've grown up as well, Danny-san, Sona said, getting Danny's attention. You used to be so shy, but when you stopped that wedding, well, it made me wish I was in Ria's place. And Sona was telling the truth. When she saw Danny fight his brother, he looked so amazing that it made her wish that she was the reason he was fighting. She sighed that Rias, her rival in more ways than one, got ahead of her. Hey, don't be so down, Danny said. If it was you getting married, and your groom's a total butt, I'd do the same for you. Really? Sona asked, looking a bit hopeful. Of course, Danny said honestly. Because you're my friend. Sona and Danny smiled as they shared this tender moment. However, Danny somehow forgot the two girls that was pleasuring him, which annoyed them. The two looked at each other and nodded. Without warning, they bit his ball, causing him to yelp. What's wrong? Sona asked. Nothing, Danny said with a chuckle, hiding the tears from his eyes. That was just a sneeze caught in a cough, nothing to worry about, heh. If you say so, Sona said in an uncertain manner. Well, since you don't need any help, I'll be going now. I'll see you tomorrow. Sona was walking out the door, causing Danny to sigh in relief. Oh, wait, Sona said, causing Danny to jump a bit. I was wondering if you wanted to spend time together, you know, just you and me. Sona was blushing and looking down, causing Danny to remember how she looked like when they first met. Sure, Danny said as he tried to fight his Edgleton. He really wanted Sona to leave quickly, and the two girls SCK him was not helping. It's been a while since we've hang out. Excellent, Sona said, a happy glint in her eyes. Well then, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, Danny said as he waved at her. He watched the door close and heard her footsteps. Once he was sure it was quiet, he him loudly as he cummed, splattering Mocha and Mizor's faces with cum. He leaned his head back to the chair, breathed for air, looking red in the face. He looked down at his two servants, who were too busy lick each other's faces clean. That was mean, you guys. What would you do if Sona-chan found us? But you were so turned on, Mocha said as she stroked the head with her finger, causing it to twitch, smiling a bit. I didn't know almost getting caught turns you on. Pervert, Mizor said as she began lick his. Danny as the two made him get an Erkton again. They grinned before they started lick his up and down. He was going to be late for dinner today. Lime end, you kids can come out now and play. Kuro hu no su. Rias looked at her new room, which was next to Danny's. She was lying on her bed, her bags still unpacked. She was waiting for Danny to come home so he can help her unpack. That was a good opportunity to ambush him. She grinned as she imagined Danny holding a pair of her underwear, and she could use that to start some fun. She sighed as she remembered the scene she saw Danny had with Siesta and Kuroka, which made her think that he already had some adult fun with some of his female servants. It made her feel jealous that she was way behind them, despite being his wife-to-be. But she was determined now. She was on the same battlefield as her rivals, and she was going to use that advantage in any way she can. Besides, she noticed something on the papers they signed. In the rules, number 7 said, any physical relationship is allowed, as long as it's in the confines of their own room. That means anything can happen. In the other rooms, Cheyenne and Aquino were thinking the same. They were going to make progress to their relationship with him, even if they have to tie him up. And that's something Aquino really wanted to do. 2 days later. Are you guys ready? Danny asked as he looked at the 2 peerages that gathered in the backyard of the inn, looking at the full moon. Yesterday, Rias and her peerage won the contest against Sona's peerage, which means that she gets to go to the familiar forest with Danny. It was a tough and weird contest, but they managed to prevail. Hi, they all said. Then open the portal, Danny said to Lisanna, who nodded. She started chanting the spell, using the light of the full moon as a power source. I just realized that we're all wearing our school uniforms, Naruto commented to Train, who realized he was right. A white portal appeared in front of them, as silver as the moon. Danny gestured at Rias to enter first, since they would be using a different portal. Once the Gremory peerage were in, Lisanna closed the portal and started opening a new one. Once it was opened, they entered. On the other side, they saw Rias and her peerage, with a few of them looking awestruck at the forest. The sky was a dark red, large mountains was everywhere, and a large forest was in front of them. Outside of the forest was a small hut. This is one creepy place, Gray said with a weary look. The people here are probably creepy as well. Hey, my friend's live here, Natsu exclaimed angrily. And I used to live here too, Lisanna exclaimed with a pout. Sorry, Gray said, mostly to Lisanna than Natsu. Aura, a voice from the hut said. They turned and saw an appealing woman with white hair, wearing a red dress that didn't hide her voluptuous body. She looked just like an older version of Lisanna. Aura, this is a surprise. Mira ni, Lisanna exclaimed as she rushed towards the woman and hugged her. It's great to see you, Lisanna-chan, Mira said as she returned the hug before looking at the rest of the guests. And it's great to see you all again. It's great to see you too, Mira-san, Danny said with a bow. I hope our familiars are okay as well. They are fine, Mira replied. My little brother was just taking care of them. All right, Natsu exclaimed with a jump. I want to go see Happy. I wonder how Kujo is, Naya, Kuroka said with a smile. It's been a while since I've seen my fairies, Urza said with a smile. I wonder how big Tengu got, Randy said. Soon, the rest of the Fenix peerage entered the hut, while Danny, Starfire, Raven, and Asia stayed behind with Rias and her peerage. Who was that? Issei exclaimed, drooling at Mira, who led Danny's peerage to the hut. That's Murajane Strauss, a former model for the underworld, Rias replied in a tone of admiration. She was also the strongest female devils ever, until she retired. Aura, I'm so jealous, Aquino said as Cheyenne nodded. But not for Natsu, Danny said with a chuckle. They look at him with a confused expression as he grinned. Mira has taken a liking to Natsu, and well, she's not called a demon without reason. She made him cry just because it made him look cute. Aura sounds like someone I can get along with, Aquino said with a smile. So, who's our guide going to be? Rias asked. It's going to be me, a deep voice said. When they looked, they saw a large, tanned, muscular man with spiky, white hair and a scar under his left eye. Hey, Elfman, Danny said with a wave before turning to the new devils. This Elfman Strauss, the second oldest of the Strauss siblings, he takes care of the familiars left in here. It's man's job to do the heavy work here, Elfman exclaimed. So you want a familiar? It's not gonna be easy. You have to be manly to take care of your partners. The new devil's sweat dropped from his explanation, while the rest just chuckled, already used to his behavior. Issei said as he raised a hand. I was wondering if I can get a super cute and sexy familiar. Idiot, Elfman shouted, causing Issei to jump a bit. A familiar is something important, something you can trust your life with. To choose a familiar with just looks and body is something unacceptable. Besides, you don't choose the familiar choose you. Oh no, Asia said as she raised her hand. I was wondering if I can get a cute familiar. Like I said, the familiar choose you, Elfman exclaimed before walking towards the forest. Now let's go. Danny, Asia, Starfire, Raven, Rias, Cheyenne, Aquino, Teresa, Gray and Issei followed him while the rest entered the hut to look at their familiars. Walking through the forest was like walking through a fairy tale forest. Wow, Asia said as she saw so many creatures that they passed by the forest. It's so pretty. Yes, the familiar forest is very manly, Elfman said. Every creature, big and small, resides here until they find their MSTR. So it's kinda like Pokemon, Issei commented. Suddenly, Elfman turned and gave him a very scary glare, seeing a monster behind him. Don't ever say that word, he said, causing Issei to nod rapidly. What was that about? Gray asked as they continued their walk. Some familiar MSTR find Pokemon offensive, Danny explained. Suddenly, something white fell from the trees and landed in front of them. They looked and saw that it was a giant silkworm. What is that? Issei exclaimed, surprised to see a worm so big before. To be honest, we have no idea, Elfman said as he scratched his head. This fella here appeared last month from a weird portal. All it did was eat and sleep and eat some more. We called it a silk bug. Ooh, it is just the cutest thing, Starfire exclaimed as she picked up the giant work and started hugging it. The silkworm looked at her before it gave her a big lick. Can I keep him? It likes you, so why not? Danny said with a shrug. Starfire cheered as she held the worm up in the air. I shall name you Silky, Starfire declared, causing Silky to cheer. Elfman instructed her on what to do to form the bond. After it was done, Starfire carried Silky in her arms. All right, let's find another one, Elfman said as he continued their search. I wonder what kind of familiar I'll have, Teresa wondered as she looked at some small creatures dashing through the bushes. As long as it's quiet, I don't care, Raven said in her usual monotone. I wish a super sexy familiar would show herself, Issei said, crossing his fingers. Cheyenne looked annoyed and was about to do something when they heard a yell. Surprised, they rushed to the source of the sound and saw a giant pig-faced, green-skinned fat monster running after what looks like a young, blonde girl in a short, green dress that hugged her body very well. She had white skin, blue eyes, big chest and pointy ears. Yes, Issei exclaimed as he stared at the girl's chest. She's the one. She's my Fami. Tifa-chan, Danny exclaimed before he and Elfman rushed towards the girl and monster. Just as it was about to grab her, Danny grabbed her and carried her to safety while Elfman took care of the monster. They watched as his left arm suddenly changed, turning into a scaly, monstrous arm. With one punch, the monster was obliterated. What was that? Gray asked as the rest were shocked. That's Elfman's magic, Rias explained. He can take over the body parts of the beasts he defeated. Take over magic. They ran towards the two as Danny put the girl down. Are you all right? Danny asked in a worried tone. Yes, the girl, Tifa he called, replied with a nod. Thank you. Do you know this girl, Danny-kun? Rias asked as she eyed the girl, noticing that her chest rivaled hers. Yes, this is Tiffania Westwood, one of my familiars and the last elf around, Danny said as he introduced the elf, who shyly bowed at them. Issei fell on his knees and P&D the ground, crying tears of jealousy. Ada, an elf? How rare, Aquino said as she eyed the girl. Where'd you find her? Just last month, Danny replied. She was being attacked by orcs, that pig monster, and I saved her. Why was she being attacked by an orc? Teresa asked in curiosity. Orcs and elves have a very bloody history, Danny replied. That's what made the elves almost extinct. Tifa-chan's probably the last of her kind. I don't know how that orc got here, Elfman said with a frown. I was sure there was no orcs in the forest. They must have found her here and wanted to finish the war, Danny said with a serious expression. Tifa-chan, from now on you're not leaving my side until this war ends. Hi, Tiffania said with a nod. There was a small, happy smile on her face as she stood next to Danny, something they all noticed. Not another one, Rias, Aquino, Cheyenne, Starfire, Raven, Asia, and Issei thought. Suddenly, a purple crow the size of a car landed in front of them, surprising them. It was looking at Raven with its intelligent eyes before it cawed. It hopped towards Raven and started nuzzling to her. Whoa, Elfman said as the crow cawed again. That's an emperor crow, the strongest bird in all the underworld. It likes you, Raven, Danny said with a grin. That's lucky. An emperor crow rarely gets close to people. It looks nice, Raven said as she petted the giant bird. Why not? Amazing, Elfman said as Raven did the bond process. Only few can ever bond with high-level beasts so easily. I guess that leaves just you four, Danny said as he looked at Teresa, Gray, Asia, and Issei. He then raised an eyebrow. Dude, where are your clothes? "D a minute," Gray exclaimed as he saw that he was in his underwear, causing Asia to cover her eyes. Why does this keep happening? He ran around to find his clothes while the others watched him. Teresa was bored, so she started twirling her baton around. Unknown to her, a creature was watching the baton stick. Curious, walked closer to her and became a baton stick. Teresa looked down when she felt something and saw another baton stick. Blinking, she picked it up and started twirling it. She spun the batons around before tossing them to the air. Suddenly, the baton she picked up turned into smoke. She was shocked when a small creature was falling towards her. It was small, fluffy and cute with brown and black fur and a bushy tail with rings on it. It looked happy as it fell back to Teresa, who caught it and the baton. Hey guys, what is this? She asked as she held the creature. A tanuki, Elfman replied as Gray put his clothes back on. They're mischievous creatures who can shapeshift. Aw, it's so cute, Asia said with a smile as the tanuki hopped on Teresa's shoulders and got comfortable. I like it, Teresa said as she petted the small creature. From now on, you're with me. The tanuki nodded and snuggled her cheek. Once Gray was fully clothed, they continued their search through the forest. They found a lot of interesting and weird creatures called undine, like the masculine-female creatures with the body of a wrestler, something that made Issei and Gray shiver, remembering the contract they used to do with someone. This is hopeless, Gray grumbled as they kept walking. We've been walking for hours. We're not going to find a familiar. Real men don't give up, Elfman exclaimed. That's right, Issei exclaimed. If there's a sexy familiar out there, then I'll find her. He's scary, Tifa said as she hid behind Danny. Issei heard her and became depressed. Suddenly, Raven's familiar suddenly cawed and picked up Raven before flying up. Teresa's familiar transformed and turned into a giant shield. Without warning, a giant slime monster appeared from the bushes and attacked them. Well, it attacked the girls. Danny managed to grab Tiffania from harm's way and Starfire flew up just in time. Kaya! They all shouted as the slime covered their bodies. What is this stuff? Rias exclaimed before she noticed her clothes started dissolving. No! Asia exclaimed as her clothes slowly disappeared. Whoa, Issei, Gray and Elfman exclaimed. What monster is that? Danny exclaimed as he turned red as their clothes disappeared, showing their underwear, which also started dissolving. It's a slime monster, Elfman explained. It attacks females and eats their clothes. Okay, that is a weird monster, Danny exclaimed as he prepared to attack. Hang on, guys. He gathered black flames in his palms, just enough to make sure the slime disappears, but not harm the girls. Wait, Issei exclaimed, tackling Danny. Please don't kill it. Wah, Danny said before they fell to the ground. That creature, that is my familiar, Issei declared with tears of happiness. Issei-kun, don't decide you're familiar like that, Rias exclaimed as her chests were exposed. Big pervert, Cheyenne said as she covered her chest and lost her skirt. Danny pushed Issei off him and fired at the slime, blasting it to oblivion. The girls all fell to the ground and covered their modesty, except for Akino, who just smirked as she noticed Danny's embarrassed look. The two girls who escaped returned and were instantly realized how lucky they were. Raven took off her jacket and handed it to Asia, who took it gratefully. HH here, Danny said as he handed his jacket, shirt and undershirt to Rias, Issei and Akino. You should cover yourselves. Rias and Issei took his shirt and jacket gratefully. Issei looked cute wearing the oversized jacket, while Rias had that got out of bed and borrowed his shirt look. Akino took the undershirt but didn't put it on. She just smirked and suddenly grabbed Danny from behind, surprising everyone. Can you cover me instead? She whispered to his ear, sending shivers to his spine, and felt something soft pressing on his back. No, he exclaimed as he turned around, took the undershirt and forced her to wear it. Ara, she said with a teasing smile. I guess this is good as well. Your scent is in this shirt. Danny turned red as Akino took a whiff on his shirt. Rias and Issei realized that she was right. His scent was in these clothes. Stop sniffing my clothes, Danny exclaimed to the three girls. Hey, a small piece of the slime monster survived, Gray said as he pointed at the small smile slithering back to the forest. Akino shot a lightning bolt that stopped the slime from moving. Rias also glared at the slime, powering up a small orb full of her destructive magic. It'll pay for the humiliation it did to her and her peerage. Before she was about to obliterate the slime, Issei got in front of her. Please, don't kill it, he exclaimed in tears. This slime is my familiar. We were made for each other. Issei-kun, please get out of my way, Rias said with a sigh. No, please let me keep Slimeru. He already named it, Gray said with a sweat drop. I've never seen someone wanting a slime monster before, Elfman said with a sweat drop. Ara, Issei-san seems to have found a connection to the slime monster, Akino said in amusement. Weak slime and weak pervert, perfect match, Issei said with a nod. Issei-kun, please choose a more reliable familiar, Rias said. Please, I promise I'll make Slimeru into the strongest ever, Issei pleaded, not noticing Slimeru edging closer to Asia. Suddenly, it jumped towards Asia, attempting to eat her clothes. Danny raised his hand and was about to fire at the slime monster when it was struck by lightning. Slimeru, Issei exclaimed, grieving the loss of his ideal familiar. Whoa, Danny said as he saw the source of the lightning. It was a small, light blue dragon flying towards Asia. A baby sprite dragon. Sprite dragon? Asia asked as the dragon nuzzled her cheek. A sprite dragon is an electrical dragon, Elfman said. It must be a male dragon, since they like females more. Well, it does look kinda cute, Issei said as he got near the dragon. Without warning, it fired at Issei, electrocuting him. Yup, Danny said. That is definitely a male dragon. They don't like males very much. The sprite dragon looked at Danny and glared before Danny lifted his bangs and showed his Sharingan. He and the dragon stared at each other before it stopped glaring at Danny. What you do? Gray asked, making sure he was far away from the sprite dragon. I calmed it down, Danny explained as he lowered his bangs. Why didn't you calmed it down before it shot me? Issei asked, his body smoke. If I did that, then you would never learn, Danny replied. It was actually payback for stopping him destroy the slime. It's cute, Asia said as she hugged the dragon. Can I really make it my familiar? It chose you, so yes, Elfman said with a nod. Okay, Asia said before she did the bond spell. I'll take good care of you, Raiden. Raiden? Teresa asked. Don't you mean Raiden? Gray said. No, Asia said. Rai is from Raijeki and Dan from Danny-san's name. You named it after me? Danny said in a surprised tone. Yes, Asia said worriedly. Is that all right? I'm honored, Danny said with a smile, causing Asia to smile as well. After that, they kept looking for a familiar for Gray and Issei, but after looking through the entire forest, they only found one familiar, a cute, adorable penguin that was following Gray. How come I didn't get one? Issei complained as he drew on the ground. He looked at the familiars and was jealous. Don't worry, Issei-kun, Rias said in a reassuring tone. I'm sure you'll find your familiar someday. I guess we should get back to the others, Danny suggested when they realized they couldn't find a familiar for Issei. Elfman led the others back to his home, giving tips on how to care for their familiars. The new devils, except Issei, started talking to their familiars. Rias was looking at Tiffania and couldn't believe her husband to be had an elf as a familiar. She thought that there were no more elves today, so meeting Tiffania was a pleasant surprise. She blinked when she remembered that Danny said he has 3 familiars. Danny Kun, Rias said, getting his attention. You have 2 more familiars, right? Yeah. What are the other 2? Well, one's a wind dragon and the other's a fire dragon, Danny replied. 2 dragons? Rias exclaimed in shock. Dragons were so powerful and prideful that it was almost impossible to get one as a familiars. Yeah, they're really friendly, Danny said. Rias narrowed her eyes when he said that. Are they girls? She asked in a suspicious tone. Yeah, Danny replied in an uncertain tone. Pervert, Rias accused. Danny froze when he heard her said that. It actually stung a bit that she would call him a pervert. Rias was jealous and was getting annoyed at the females that were interested in Danny, and she suspected that he was enjoying the attention. What's next, an angel or Seraphal? Wah, he said as the redhead pouted and looked away from him. I'm not a pervert. I never knew you were a pervert, Aquino said with a smile. That might actually very useful. You. Cheyenne just gave him a deadpanned expression that actually looked accusing. With that, everyone headed back to the Strauss hut, while Danny was telling them that he wasn't a pervert. Hurry guys, run! Danny exclaimed to Kuroka, Jake, Naruto and Hinata as they ran from the monsters behind them. It happened so fast, they were invited to a special party and were attacked by the ones that invited them. They entered the room and closed the door, putting all the heavy stuff to barricade the doors. Why is this happening? Hinata cried as she hugged Naruto. I don't know, Naruto replied as their barricade started shaking as the attackers are breaking the door. Get ready to fight for your lives, Danny ordered as fire erupted from his hands. They all tensed as the banging got louder. They all readied to fight when the banging suddenly stopped. They all held their breath, wondering if the attackers returned to normal. The wall beside them suddenly exploded, surprising everyone. Danny was shocked when a hand appeared in front of his face. Nuo. Kuo. Reyes was humming happily as she read her English homework. The rest of her peerage were with her, doing their own thing. Their peaceful moment was ruined when a magic portal appeared, surprising them. Ravel came stumbling out the portal, looking frightened. Next to her was Naruto's sister, Kunu, and Hinata's sister, Hanabi. Ravel-chan, Rias asked in shock as the two fell on their knees. Rias-sama, Ravel exclaimed in relief. You've got to help me. What's wrong? Rias asked in worry. It's Oniachin, she cried, getting the others' attention. They were interrupted when another portal opened. They saw the symbol, so they sighed in relief. Oh no, Kunu exclaimed as she and Ravel hugged each other. They found us. Huh? Rias asked before some blurs ran out the portal. The two girls screamed as they were engulfed by the strangers. Little sister. Rias and her peerage watched in silence as Danny, Naruto and Hinata hugged their sisters, who were struggling to get free, their faces red from embarrassment. They noticed that their skin was a little gray and their eyes were gray and unfocused. Little sister. Naya. They turned and saw Cheyenne being hugged and smothered by Kuroka, who looked just like Danny, Naruto and Hinata. They also noticed Jake stumbled out the door like a zombie, saying little sister over and over. Suddenly, another portal opened behind Rias and two arms were wrapped around her. Shocked, Rias looked behind and saw Cersech's with gray skin and eyes. He started rubbing his cheek with hers, making her feel uncomfortable. Little sister. What the hell is going on? Gray asked as she, Elsa and Rose tried to pry Kuroka off Cheyenne. Flashback. Come on, Sona-chan, Danny-kun, a 6-year-old Rias exclaimed, waving at her friends. 6-year-old Sona was slowly following her friend with a worried look, with 6-year-old Danny, the same expression on his face. Are you sure about this, Rias-san? Sona said in a nervous tone. We might get in trouble, Danny said as he looked around the place. You guys should be more adventurous, Rias exclaimed to her two friends. Onii-chan is out, so we can sneak in his room. Why do you want to do that? Danny and Sona complained. Because he said that he has some treasure in his room, Rias exclaimed excitedly. Don't you know that it's romantic to look for hidden treasure? You've been reading manga again, Sona said. But your brother's scary, Danny said, remembering how scary Circetus was when they first met. Danny, what would Luffy do? Rias asked. Danny thought about it before nodding, leaving Sona with no choice but to go with them. Rias smiled widely as she opened the door and sneaked in with her two best friends. Flashback end. Rias sighed as she remembered that moment, looking out the window of her room. She smiled lightly as she remembered the treasure they found, which turned out to be pictures of her from infant to 6-year-old. She remembered using her power to destroy the pictures before they left and watch anime instead. The three were always together, at school, at each other's home. They were inseparable. The circle of friends just grew when they received their evil pieces and made new friends. But then Danny left and the circle just felt incomplete, even with her new friends. She felt lonely without him, and she knew Sona did too. It was then that she noticed Sona changing. She transformed from the shy and quiet girl to the serious and confident young woman. Even Danny was different. He became more confident and stronger. Even the way he wears his clothes were different. It really made her feel like they've grown more than her. She didn't feel like she's changed. She sighed as she lied down on her bed, looking at the ceiling. Her crimson hair was spread all over her pillow. She started twirling her hair, staring at it. This was the sign that she was part of the Gremory clan, but to her, it was more than that. Flashback. Hey, Danny-kun? Young Rias asked as she and Danny sat in her family's private garden, trying his new treats. Why, yeah, Danny asked, wiping the crumbs off his mouth. When we first met, what did you notice about me? Rias asked, a little bashfully. Danny said, looking on the ground. Your hair. My hair? Rias asked, looking at her hair. Yeah, it was my first time ever seeing pretty hair like yours, Danny said, blushing. Rias looked at him before at her hair. It was the first time someone commented her hair first. Usually, it was her beauty or her family name, leaving the hair to be the last to be complimented. She smiled a bit as she twirled her hair with her finger. You know, I like your hair too, Rias said, and she did. It was unique, especially for a phoenix. Thanks, Danny said with a flustered look. Flashback end. It was then she began to crush on her first male friend. She wasn't like the rest of the boys she met. He was humble and kind, not arrogant. Her feelings just grew and bloomed into love after he saved her from her engagement. But she knew she wasn't the only one who fell for the phoenix. She knew that Sona had a crush on Danny after he beat her in chess, a weird marital condition she made, making them rivals. But she has the upper hand now, since she became his fiancée. But then again, she knew Siesta, Kuroka, and possibly some female members from his peerage played around with him. But that'll change soon. She plans to seal the deal when the moment arrives. She then stood up, since she was feeling thirsty. She opened the door and walked through the halls when she stopped at the corner, hearing voices. Curious, she peeked and saw Siesta and Kuroka. Is Danny Samba really going to go out on a date with Sona-sama? Siesta asked, her face frowning in jealousy. Yup, Naya, Kuroka said with a nod. He told me so, Naya. Sona-chan asked Danny-kun out. They're going out tomorrow. Ria's eyes widened when she heard that. Sona actually asked Danny out first. She bit her thumbnail, thinking that Sona was getting bolder. Oh, how I wish for Danny-sama to take me out on a date, Siesta sighed, thinking about dating her MSTR. Take me out to movies, eat at a restaurant, holding his hand in public. I prefer the nightly activities, Naya, Kuroka said with a smirk. I know you do too, Naya. Siesta blushed, but didn't deny it. Meanwhile, Rias quickly walked back to her room. She was slightly scolding herself for her carelessness. She should have known Sona would take advantage of Danny being the disciplinary chairman for alone time, taking that chance to strike. Well played, Sona-chan, Rias said as she went to her dresser. But don't think I'll let you alone with him. According to all the romance manga she read, the childhood friend would become the just be friends couple. There was no way she was going to let that happen to her. She will be the #1 girl in his heart. The next day, Danny was waiting at the park, humming to himself. It was about 9 in the morning, not a cloud in the sky. He was dressed in a red jacket over a white shirt, a pair of jeans and sneakers. He was waiting patiently for Sona to come, since he promised to hang out with her. "Sorry I'm late," a voice said behind him. He turned and saw Sona walking towards him. She was dressed in a simple black dress with a blue shirt under a blue jacket and black shoes, with a handbag slung on her shoulder. "Nah, I wasn't waiting long," Danny said with a small smile. "You look good." "Thanks," Sona said with a small smile. "So, shall we get going?" Danny and Sona walked out the park and towards the city. Unknown to them, a disguised Rias was following them. She was dressed in a brown trench coat, a fedora, sunglasses, and a scarf, hiding her appearance. She woke up early in the morning and waited for Danny to leave. When she saw him get all dressed up, she sneakily followed him without anyone knowing. Danny and Sona were walking through the city, talking about. Sona was asking him about his long journey, curious about the things he saw. He animatedly talked about his journey, telling her how he met his friends and all the things he saw. Sona listened with fascination. She's only been to the underworld and most of Japan, but she always wanted to see the world. She was slightly jealous that her crush saw it before her. "We're here," Danny said, looking at their destination. Sona looked and saw that they were in an amusement park. "Man, I haven't been in an amusement park in years." "Me too," Sona said, remembering the few small chances the group of friends have when there was an amusement park they could visit. She smiled at the nostalgia. "Well, where do you want to go first?" Danny asked with a smile. Rias followed her two friends everywhere on the park. First they went to a small water ride, then to a horror train that didn't really scare them, a caterpillar, a rotor, and then a roller coaster. They even went to a few game stands, with Danny winning all the throwing stands, even though they were rigged. Rias was pouting in jealousy as Danny handed a stuffed rabbit to Sona, who took it with a smile and blush. They were currently resting in the food stands, with Danny eating a hot dog and Sona a tuna sandwich. Rias was a few tables behind them, eating a sandwich. "This is a fun day, Sona-chan," Danny said with a smile as he finished his hot dog. "It's too bad we couldn't have the others hang out with us." "Yeah, I have fun," Sona said with a happy smile. She then took a sip of her iced tea and looked at her date. She couldn't remember the last time she had this much fun. But this wasn't the goal. Her goal was to confess to Danny and hopefully make a marriage contract. As a promising devil, Sona expected Danny to be showered with marriage requests from different clans. She already knew about his engagement with Rias, and she knew that most male devils have multiple wives. Heck, she even knew about what happened at the disciplinary room. It wasn't exactly soundproof. "Danny," she said, dropping the formalities. "There's something I want to ask you." "What is it?" Danny asked, looking curious. "It's," Sona said, turning red. "It's them." Now that she was here, she started getting tongue-tied. She thought about every scenario and practiced talking about it, but just being in front of him made her nervous. "You okay, Sona-chan?" Danny asked as Sona kept stammering. "Aye," Sona said as she looked around before spotting the Ferris wheel. "I'll tell you there." Danny and Rias looked to where she was pointing and saw the Ferris wheel. Danny was confused, but complied nonetheless. It's been a while since he rode the Ferris wheel. Rias was worried. There was nothing more romantic in an amusement park, and from all the anime and manga she read, all confession scenes happened in the Ferris wheel, and to all the adult anime movies she watched for research and thought that there was a chance that the two would mess around. She didn't want another girl to be above her again. If there was another one, she might just be an extra girl to his HRM. Danny and Sona, followed by Rias, walked towards the Ferris wheel. There was a long line, with children, adults and teens, all wanting to ride the Ferris wheel for different reasons. Sona was trying to calm her nerves, her heart beating faster as the line shortens. "I can do this," she said, taking deep breaths. "Okay, the next 3 people can go on now," the handler of the ride said cheerfully. 3, Danny said. Both he and Sona looked behind them and saw a disguised Rias, who was too preoccupied that it was too late to hide. The 3 looked at each other in awkward silence. A moment later, the 3 were inside a cart, with Rias chuckling sheepishly, Sona staring at her and Danny feeling awkward as he looked between the 2 girls. "So, Rias, I find it strong to believe you're here by coincidence, dressed like a stalker," Sona said, her arms crossed. I wasn't dressed like a stalker, Rias exclaimed indignantly. And besides, there was no way I'm going to let you alone with Danny-kun. Unlike you, my reason is pure, Sona retorted. With the amount of anime PRN you have, you were probably planning on luring Danny-san in a hotel room. How do you know about that? Rias exclaimed, her face redder than her hair. You were gonna lure me in a hotel? Danny said in disbelief. Not that, Rias exclaimed. She then looked at Sona. Then what was the important thing you wanted to tell him? That's none of your business, Sona said coolly. Blue and red auras clashed, causing the cart to shake a bit. Danny panicked, thinking that it might cause trouble for them. Calm down, he exclaimed, flaring his aura. It snuffed out theirs, surprising them. They were by no means weak, since they trained with the best, but to see their friend easily overpower their aura was surprising, and slightly RSNG to them. Now then, Rias Issei, it wasn't nice you were following us. You could have asked us to come instead. Rias looked down a bit from being scolded by Danny. Now, what was it that you wanted to tell me, Sona-chan? Danny said, turning his attention to Sona. You can trust Rias Issei. She can keep secrets. Sona looked at Danny, before at Rias, who was waiting patiently. She was nervous, wringing her hands. She looked at Danny again, who was smiling encouragingly. That smile calmed her down enough, so she stood up, grabbed Danny by the shirt and embraced him on the lips. Ria's jaw dropped as Danny stopped moving. He was surprised by the sudden embrace. He noted that she tasted like mint, and her lips were so soft. A few seconds later, Sona stepped back, a light blush on her face, staring at Danny's shocked face. I love you, Danny-san, she confessed, looking straight at his eyes. Just like Rias, I want to be with you. Will you take me as your second wife? Danny looked at Sona in shock as Rias calmed down and just watched the scene. Danny looked at Sona, who was waiting nervously for his reply. Wow, he commented, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't know you feel that way about me. Man, they're right, I am clueless. Well, what's your answer? Sona asked, nervously. Danny looked at her before taking a deep breath. If you want me, then I'll give it a chance, Danny said with a blush. Sona looked at him before she smiled widely and hugged Danny, causing him to blush lightly. She gave him another peck on the lips, causing Rias to fume. Okay, that's enough, she exclaimed, pushing the two away from each other. She then looked at Rias, who didn't look pleased at being interrupted. And Sona, don't forget that I'm the one who's going to marry him first. HMPH, like that's something to boast about, after all the things he did, Sona said haughtily. She then looked at Danny. Don't think I don't know what and your servants did in that room. I should punish you for it. Danny blushed as he gave a sheepish chuckle to Sona, who was giving him a stern look. But since you're my future husband, I will look over it, for now, Sona said, causing Danny to nod. Meanwhile, Rias looked at Danny and Sona, thinking about what Sona said. If that was true, it was only a matter of time before someone took his first time. With a pout, she walked towards him, grabbed him by the cheeks, and embraced him, pushing her tongue in his mouth. Danny emanated him from the embrace as their tongues wrestled for DMNCE, momentarily forgetting about Sona. Rias then pulled away, a string of saliva connecting them before it broke. It's not fair, Yubaka, she said, surprising him. I'm your fiancé, and yet you play around with other women. You should be playing with my body first. As she said that, she grabbed his hand and placed it at her right BRST. Danny blushed as he felt her soft BRST over her shirt. He marveled at how soft it was. Rias was blushing, looking like she was enjoying his hand. Sona, who was watching, looked at her two friends in disbelief. She snapped out of it and glared at Rias. She wasn't going to let Rias do whatever she wants. She walked towards them, grabbed Danny's other hand, and placed it at her chest. Danny looked at Sona in surprise as she rubbed his hand on her chest. It's not fair if you only show Rias attention, Sona said, trying to look stern, but ended up with a pout. Please, play with me, too. Danny didn't know what to do. He looked at his childhood friends, his hands rubbing their chest, as they looked at each other challengingly. There's only one way to settle this, Rias said, and Sona nodded in agreement. Danny just stood there, wondering what they were going to do. Later. How the hell did we end up here? Danny mentally exclaimed. The three of them were in a love hotel, buying the most expensive room they have. Danny was sitting on a heart-shaped, king-size bed, dressed in only boxers. Rias and Sona were taking a shower, giving him time to calm himself. He looked around the room, which seemed a little okay. Like the bed, the walls and carpet were red. There was a dresser near the bed, a cabinet, a glass desk and chair, a plasma screen TV, and a mini fridge. "Okay, Phoenix, calm down," he said, taking deep breaths. "I thought you'd be happy," Acknowledge commented. "You're finally losing your virginity to that female Gremory you like, plus that young Citri." "It's not that," Danny thought. "I just didn't think I'll lose my virginity like this. I always thought I'll lose it after I get married." "What kind of devil are you?" "It's your fault." Suddenly, the bathroom door opened. He looked and blushed as Rias and Sona walked towards him, clad in towels and still a little wet from their shower. He gulped as he stared at their wet skin, mesmerized. "If you keep staring like that, it'll make me feel embarrassed," Rias said in a teasing voice. Danny blushed and looked down. "Don't worry, it's okay to look all you like." Rias looked calm, but on the inside, she was excited. She dreamt this moment ever since she hit PBRTY and started her sec ed with Graphia. She, along with Aquino and Cheyenne, studied fervently, wanting the knowledge to please their future husband-lover. Sona, on the other hand, was nervous, a light blush on her face. She too had sec ed lessons, but they were from her sister, and they were incredible inappropriate, even by devil standards. It involves HNDCFFS and a strap-on. The two girls looked at each other before nodding. The two dropped their towels in front of him, revealing their naked bodies. Danny couldn't help but stare at them. It's been a while since he saw her naked, when they were kids, and she grew a lot. Her melons were G-cup and nubs pink, long, smooth legs, a smooth PP, a nice-looking butt, wide hips, and white, flawless skin. Sona, while not as sexy as Rias, wasn't bad to look at. Fair, smooth skin, B-cup melons with pink nubs, wide hips, a nice butt, smooth PP, and a flat stomach. "Well, Danny-kun, what do you think?" Rias asked as she twirled around, her hair flying around her. Danny muttered, his face red, unable to think properly. Rias gave a teasing smirk before she looked at Sona, who was covering herself in embarrassment. Ria's smirk increased before she rushed behind Sona. Before she could react, Rias snaked her arms around Sona and grabbed her melons. "Ah, Tilda," Sona hummed, surprised by Ria's sudden grope. Rias, stop." "Wow, I guessed you stopped growing, Sona," Rias said in a teasing tone, rubbing her melons. Sona tried to glare at her, but it ended up like a pout. Besides, Danny-kun is enjoying the show. Sona looked at Danny and saw him watching them, a tent appearing on his boxers. Danny noticed them staring, so he covered his crotch, much to their displeasure. "Hey, how come you're still clothed?" Rias said while she kept feeling Sona. "Take them off." Danny shifted around nervously. "Well, it's a little cold in here, and I haven't taken a shower yet, and I think I left the oven on." Rias and Sona looked at Danny with deadpan expressions as he tried to make up some excuses. Rias suddenly pointed a finger, creating a small, red and black orb, and firing. Danny yelped when the orb hit his boxers, turning it to nothing. He quickly grabbed a heart-shaped pillow to cover himself. "Hey, are you trying to kill me?" he exclaimed indignantly. "Stop covering yourself, you big baby," Rias exclaimed as she stomped towards him and grabbed the pillow. "You've shown it to others, why not to me?" "I'm shy." Sona watched her two friends argue as Rias tried to remove the pillow to show Danny's privacy, a sweat drop forming on her head. Though she had to agree with Rias, so she walked towards them and grabbed the pillow. Surprised by her joining, the pillow was ripped out of Danny's hands and into the air. The two then looked at their prize. Rias only saw it through the communication spell, and Sona didn't saw it because it was behind the desk, so they were a bit startled by the size. "Stop staring so much," Danny exclaimed, his face red. Despite having some experience of being naked in front of girls, he was still embarrassed. He blamed Acknowledge on that, since he kept eating the sins Danny has, so all his lustful experiences were gone, so was his confidence. That shook the girls out of their stupor. Sona turned red and looked away, taking peeks at it, while Rias grinned eagerly, her face red. She was breathing heavily, her heart PND, and the musky scent was making her horny. Without warning, she grabbed his Erkton, causing him to yelp loudly. Rias marveled at what she was touching. She started using both hands, feeling him up, his imminent music to her ears. "It's so strong," she commented, stroking it before touching the head. "And soft." Rias Heim, Danny Mull. "Stop." Rias just giggled, feeling confident. She remembered seeing him so strong and brave during his fight with Riser, and now here he was, at the palm of her hands. It made her feel powerful. With a playful smirk, she increased her stroking. Sona was watching, looking at Danny's expression as Rias played his PP. She saw the same expression back at school, when Mocha and Mizor was with him, and she got turned on by it. So seeing him make that expression again was turning her on. Feeling brave, she kneeled next to Rias and joined her. She hesitantly stroked him, marveling at how big and hot it was. She saw the look on his face, and she can't help but smile. Danny was in a world of pleasure as his two childhood friends stroked his PP, sending pleasure through his body. Their soft hands were making him much to his embarrassment and their amusement. "My, to think that someone as strong as you can be so SBMSSV, Danny Kun," Rias said in a teasing voice, rubbing her cheek on his PP. "Maybe I'll do this to you if we ever have a rating game against each other." Danny glared at her, getting annoyed by her teasing. Though the glare lost its heat because of the expression on his face. He yelped when he felt a pair of soft lips touch the underside of his PP. He looked down and saw Sona lovingly planting embrace on his PP. "Sona-chan," Rias pouted, seeing Sona taking the attention away. Not wanting to be outdone, Rias started embrace the other side of the PP. Danny was staring at the magnificent sight of Rias and Sona embrace his manhood. Soon, their embrace turned to lick. He shivered as their tongues traveled from the bottom to the head. "Are you feeling good, Danny Kun?" Rias asked between lick. "Your little friend, he's twitching so much." After she said that, they started SCK on it. Danny yelped as they started SCK, leaving red marks all over his manhood and ball. The two then focused on the head, the most sensitive part. Danny could feel his ball tighten as the girls mercilessly SCK on his head. Soon, he couldn't take it anymore. "I'm leaking," he exclaimed, and that was their only warning. White SMN erupted, hitting the two girls in the face by surprise. He kept leaking for a whole minute before it stopped. He was breathing heavily as he looked at Rias and Sona. Their faces and chests were stained with his cum. "Moo, you should give a heads up if you're going to cum," Rias said as she scooped the cum from her melons and put it in her mouth. It's sweet." "You're right," Sona said, lick the cum from her fingers. "Your cum is surprisingly sweet. My mother said SMN tastes bitter. I could eat it all day." "Stop talking about it like that," Danny exclaimed, his face red. "Why? Is it turning you on?" Rias asked, noticing his PP hadn't softened. In fact, it was becoming bigger. "My, you are a big pervert." "All right, that's it," Danny exclaimed as he stood up. Before the two girls could react, Danny turned into a blur, and they felt themselves fly in the air for a second, landing on the bed. Groaning, the two looked up and saw Danny standing over them, his expression shadowed and his manhood standing tall. It actually scared the two girls. Instead of the shy and gentle Danny, it was an animal. "How about I return the favor?" Danny said as he leaned towards the two girls. "WWW, what do you mean?" Sona asked, her heart beating fast. "I'll make you two come," he exclaimed. Before they could react, they felt his hands on their kitties. The two of them in surprise as he rubbed their womanhood. "My, aren't you too wet?" "Danny-san," Sona nummed as she felt her hips buckle, pleasure coursing through her body. "Og, more," Rias exclaimed, holding his arm and kept rubbing herself on his hand. "Your hand feels so good." "Who's the pervert now?" Danny said as he rubbed furiously, enjoying the sounds the girls were making. "Look at yourselves, gushing like a river." The two girls just kept him at home, buckling their hips harder from his ministrations. He enjoyed the payback and their wanton expressions. With a smirk, he inserted a finger inside their kitties. They both screamed from the surprise PNTRTN, feeling his fingers inside them. He wiggled his fingers inside them, moving in and out. The room was soon filled with the girls' screams and Eminem, sweat covering their bodies. Danny enjoyed the warmth and tightness around his fingers. He could feel their kitties convulsing as their bodies spasm. He could also feel his hands getting wet from their gushing kitties. Feeling in control, he removed his fingers from their pussies, making them groan in protest. Suddenly, Danny pushed Sona to Rias, causing her to lie on top of her. "Hey, what are you doing?" Rias asked as she and Sona looked him. They saw him looking at their kitties with a smirk. "This," he said as he started lick them. The two girls yelped and M&M as he greedily licked their kitties. Delicious. Danny tilde, they M&M as he kept lick and SCK their kitties. Their CLT and nubs kept rubbing as they hugged each other, sending more pleasurable waves to their bodies. So this is what they were feeling, Rias thought through her pleasure-addled mind. It's so good. This is so shameful, but I don't want to stop, Sona thought as she breathed heavily. They soon felt something building, and knew they were about to orgasm. Danny seemed to have sensed it too, since he increased his ministrations. Danny kun, Rias minimum in a loud voice. See coming? Sona cried as the two girls hugged each other tightly. The two girls then licked right at Danny's face and mouth. The two of them as they breathed heavily as Danny licked their kitties clean. You two cummed a lot, Danny said as he cleaned his face. Now, let's get to the fun part. He gently pushed Sona aside and looked at Rias. Sweat lightly covered her body, her appealing face lightly flush, her bountiful chest moving up and down as she breathed heavily. His eyes then traveled downwards, looking at her smooth stomach to her smooth, wet pee-pee and appealing legs. His hands touched her waist and traveled down to her knees. Danny kun, she said before Danny picked up her legs and spread them apart. Feeling uncharacteristically bashful, she turned away and covered her lower body. Wait, I need to ready myself. After all the teasing you did? Danny said as he removed her hands and lined his pee-pee to her pee-pee. I'm not gonna wait anymore. He then leaned forward and gave her an encouraging embrace, which she returned. He then moved back and pushed his pee-pee forward. The two groaned as Danny felt how tight her pee-pee was. After getting halfway through, he felt something blocking his pee-pee. He knew that it was her hymen. Danny looked at Rias, seeing how nervous she was through her eyes, but she was also smiling excitedly. With an encouraging nod from her, Danny took a deep breath and pushed his entire pee-pee through the barrier. Rias gasped as she felt an immense pain through her body. Tears flowed out of her eyes as she grabbed on Danny's shoulders, her nails digging into his flesh. Danny didn't wince as he focused on not moving, waiting for Rias to get used to him. His hands went to her melons, massaging them to distract her from the pain. Rias mewed as Danny squeezed her melons. Danny kun, she emanated once the pain was replaced with pleasure. You can move now. Danny nodded before slowly moving his hips. He pulled his pee-pee until only the head was in, before pushing it back in, hitting her CRVX and G-spot, and kept repeating it. Rias emanated in a cute voice as Danny increased the pace. Harder, she would wrapping her legs around his waist. Meanwhile, Sona was watching her two childhood friends having sex. It was something she never thought she would see, and it was making her hot. Unable to control the urges, she started masturbating, trying to ease the itch. Danny was uncontrollably moving his hips, marveling at how tight she was. It hurt for a while, getting his pee-pee crushed by her tight pee-pee, but soon it felt amazing, like his pee-pee was melting in pleasure. He looked at Rias and saw an expression that shouldn't be on an heiress. He grunted as he felt his CLMX coming. Soon, his hips were a blur and Rias' became screams of pleasure. Rias, I'm almost there, he groaned as he held on to her waist. And me too, she cried, wrapping her arms around him. I want to come together. Danny nodded and just kept going, feeling the build-up. Then, with one loud grunt, he ejaculated inside Rias, who CLMX as the hot liquid poured inside her. She then fell to the bed, breathing and sweating heavily. Danny leaned forward and gave her a loving embrace, something she weakly returned. Danny then removed himself from her, causing her pee-pee to leak. He then turned his attention to Sona, who was furiously fingering herself. He smiled as he walked towards her. Sona looked at him with a wanton expression. It's your turn, Danny said as he stopped in front of her. Sona looked at him before down, seeing his cum-coated pee-pee. She still can't believe that that thing was inside Rias. Gulping, she leaned down and started lick his pee-pee, surprising him. Sona knew as she licked his pee-pee clean from the cum, tasting both him and Rias. If she were to describe it, it was like two flavors of ice cream on each other. Once all the cum were licked clean, she lied down on her back and spread her legs. Hurry up, Danny-san, she said in a pleading tone, her face red. PP put it in me already. Danny looked at Sona's embarrassed and eager expression, breathed impatiently. She was so cute that Danny just wanted to tease her. Do you want me to? He said with a smirk. Then ask for it. Sona looked at his smirking face, glaring at him cutely. She already doing something embarrassing, and now he was telling her to do it more. PL, she mumbled, looking away from him. What was that? I can't hear you, he said teasingly. It was like he became a different person after leaking. Please, put your PP in me, she said, her face red. Louder, he sang, rubbing the head on her entrance. Diamant, just FCK me already, Sona demanded angrily, getting impatient. Move your PP in my PP. Do it or I'll make you clean the whole school with a toothbrush. Danny smirked before giving her an embrace and pushing his PP in her. Sona suddenly hugged Danny as she felt her hymen broke. Tears appeared, but she held it back as she kept embraced Danny, trying to pass the pain. Danny kept embrace until his lips went down, from her cheek to the chin, neck to her melons. Sona suddenly pushed Danny off her upper body to cover her melons, surprising him. What's wrong, Sona-chan? He asked as Sona looked at him bashfully. My melons, they're not as big as Ria's, she mumbled. She was always envious of girls with bigger busts than her, from her sister to Ria's, even some of the girls from her peerage. She felt inferior when it comes to sex appeal. I don't want to show you. But they're so cute, he said as he gently moved her hands, showing her melons. Sona blushed when she heard that. She suddenly squeaked when she felt Danny placing his mouth on her left melon. She eminem lewdly as she felt him SCK on her melons. She flailed her legs as she grabbed the blankets underneath her, the pain slowly disappearing as Danny focused on her melons. The Phoenix was SCK, lick and nibbling on her left melon before going to the right, leaving red marks all over her melons and making her NPL strong. After a few minutes, Danny looked at his work. Sona was red-faced with teary eyes, her melons covered in saliva and hickey marks. He then felt her waist move, signaling that she was ready. With a nod, Danny started moving his hips slowly and gently, making her make small mmm. As expected, she was as tight as Ria's, just as warm too. Soon, he started increasing his speed, causing Sona's M&M to turn into screams of pleasure. Og, Danny-san, Sona cried, her expression so shameful she would never show to her peerage. Ah, faster, FCK me harder. Wow, Sona-chan, Danny said as they shook the bed. To think you would be so enthusiastic, I guess it's always the shy one, huh? Sona didn't answer as she focused on her waist, trying to sync with his movements. She never thought she would feel like this after losing her virginity. It felt so good that it was changing her. After a few minutes of sec, Danny and Sona CLMX. Danny filled her with his cum until some spilled to the bed. Sona breathed with a smile on her face, sweat covering her body. You seem to be enjoying yourself, a voice said that made Sona turn her head, spotting Rias looking at them with a smirk, having recovered slightly from the amazing moment in her life. You were a minimum louder than the PRN actress in my movies. Sona looked a bit ashamed, but hid it with a glare. Before she could retort, Sona and Rias were pushed to each other, falling on their side. Surprised, they looked and saw Danny, still strong and ready to go again. Ready for round 2? He said as the girls stared at him in shock. What? You guys forget I'm a Phoenix. We regenerate, even after sec. So, get ready for a Luoung night, and let's make it more fun. Phoenix fire clones. In bursts of flames, 3 more naked Dannys appeared, all having rock-strong PP and eager smirks. Sona and Rias were shocked to see him do that. Now there were 4 horny Phoenixes in front of them. It was both an intimidating and RSNG sight for them. Hang on, Danny-kun, Rias said as she and Sona crawled away from them. She watched enough hentai to know what 4 boys and 2 girls mean. Yeah, let's calm down for a moment, Sona said as she and Rias hugged each other in fear. She was also aware what their situation would lead. The 4 Dannys looked at each other before at the girls. No. They then pounced at them, causing them to scream in surprise. 2 clones grabbed 1 girls and started having fun with them. Original Danny was under Rias, moving in and out her PP, his tongue dominating hers. His hands were also playing with her chest, tweaking her nubs and squeezing the underside. Meanwhile, clone number 1 was massaging her butt, spreading the cheeks to reveal her hole. He started lick the unused rosebud, causing Rias to M&M in Danny's mouth. It felt weird to HVE her anus lick, but it was pleasant. She suddenly jumped when she felt the clone's PP pushing through the entrance of her butt. Before she could stop him, the head managed to get in. Her eyes widened from the intrusion as he pushed deeper. Rias suddenly screamed as both her holes were being P&D. Pain and pleasure flooded through her body as the two PP went in and out of her, and she was enjoying it. Suddenly, loud and grunts caught her attention. She turned her head and saw Sona on all fours, one clone banging her from behind, holding her hips, and another clone receiving a BLWJB. Rias saw Sona enjoying herself, because of the expression on her face as she SCK on the PP. Rias couldn't count how many times she cummed, but she didn't care. The feeling of the PP going in and out of her was addicting. She suddenly felt the two increase their tempo, their grunts getting louder. With a loud growl, the two Dannys leaking in both her holes. Rias memmed shamefully as hot cum filled her butt. It was like her stomach was being filled. She rested her head on Danny's melons. She then looked at Sona, and saw that her clones were also coming, filling her PP and staining her face with cum. Suddenly, the two girls were lifted off the bed and were being carried by their legs. They both looked down and saw that their pussies directly above the two strong PP. "Ready for more?" the clone said. The two girls just nodded, pleasure making their minds hazy. The Dannys grinned at each other as two of them dropped the girls on their PP. That night, all they could hear were M&M, groans, screams, and the sounds of flesh hitting flesh. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author TheWhiteTitan on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.